Kia ora folks, welcome to EU Woodcraft and DIY. This week I've got a full build for you. I'm going to step by step through this little table. This was a Sunday Arvo project that started in March and finished in late June. So yeah, here's to schedules. It's a beauty little table, very simple. It's got the aprons and the legs. There's Mortise-and-Tenon joinery in there with a bit of a trick to it that makes it easy for people who aren't confident with chisels but have a table saw. And it's got some little tapered legs on it. I don't know how good they show up, but it was my first go at cutting leg tapers on the table saw. So yeah, let's step through this build. Hope you enjoy it. Today we're going to be using the rest of the boards from last week, plus these Spanish ones. I've pulled out 4 of them, which will be more than I need, but better to have more than not enough. And we probably won't use all of these. We're going to use a lot of them though. So let's get the planing. I'm actually going to get started on this thing. A square table that's been on the list for many weeks now. And I have some ideas about how I'm going to make it. And of course, that will start with make these guys square. So I've chalked up the ripping blade on the table saw and I'll make these guys square. I'll probably chop them in half first because it's only like 430. Let me refer to my plans. Yeah, about 430 mil high. So I'll chop it in half, make them square, make them all the sides parallel all the way around. And then I have an idea on how I'm going to do the joinery. So it should be a good day. Let's get into it. I was reading my plans without my glasses. They're actually 230 high, so half the height of the planter box. So I'll get 3 out of one and 1 out of this other one. And, let's chop them. Just to quickly recap that process, I just tidied up the edges and then I set the saw to the narrow dimension. So these ones are wide and they're narrow. Set the saw to the narrow width, cut these guys off So now they're roughly square. Then I just brought the fence in about 1 millimeter. Run the two worst sides through the table saw with the good side up against the fence. So you do one that way, then you rotate it, one that way, and you end up with perfectly square bits of wood. So there's our legs. They're not quite the right height, but they're nice and square, finished size here and here. Next, I have these parts that I've glued together that are going to be the rails that go in between the posts. So posts like that, rails go across there. In my last kind of rustic build, I used pocket holes to do the joinery. In this one, I'm going to use Mortise-and-Tenon, but I'm going to use a trick. At least in my mind, it's a trick because the Mortise-and-Tenon kind of scares me a little bit. Cutting out and getting the depths right and all that sort of stuff. So I'm gonna try something here with the Dado stack, and yeah, let's see how that goes. Here's my plan. I'm going to use the Dado stack to cut out channels in my legs all the way down. I've worked out that about 12 mil gives me a decent cut in without leaving too little left. So we'll do that. I'll set this to 12 mil deep. We'll put it just off center. Run it one way, turn it around, run it the other way. That way the channels will be directly in the center. And then we'll process the rails before we go on and do the next thing. I think this is going to work. Let's see. The next part of this puzzle is to use the offcuts to fill in most of the slots I just cut and leave me with a mortise at the top. To me, that seems like a good way of getting it done. I don't have any sharp chisels and I don't have any way of making them sharp. I just don't have the skills yet. So future me can learn how to do it properly. Yeah, they're going to be fine. This one's a bit tighter. That's okay. I need to make at least one end really nice and square. So back to the table saw. Right. My brain's working a bit slow this morning. I think I need to make these final height before I set them. I want them about 60 from the top, but these are quite a lot bigger than I want them to be. I want them to be 230 and they're just over 300. So back to the table saw, get these the right height, then get these the right height, then glue them in. My thinking on fitting these in here is that this gap doesn't need to be perfect because I haven't made the rails yet, so I can make the rails to fit the gap. Well, that's the plan. So I've just made them all the same. So now I've just got to fit them in there. Get the glue out. And away we go. Well, the fit was a bit tighter than I would have liked, but with a bit of persuasion we got there. Now I'll let them dry up, and I left these guys a tiny bit proud, so I'll run them through the table saw again to clean that up to the final size. And yeah, I don't know, they're little pockets, way better than I could have done with a chisel. Legs are done. Now I've got to tidy up these rails. I think I'm going to run them through the planer a couple times first because they're a bit too thick. If they go like that, that's just a bit too chunky. So I'm going to plane them down. Parts are coming together now. I've got my legs, got my rails. I've got to figure out what the distance is from there to there. So I'll get to that, and then I'll just chop these. I need obviously way more material than I need. I only need 4 rails, right? So figure it out and I'll chop. 283 was the number. So basically I just got the final dimension by lining these up with some marks on the table. And final dimension is 385 from my handy dandy notebook. So then the distance between the two plus 13 deep, 283. So now I've just got to make these fit in there. Over to the table saw and the dado stack. Yet another thing I don't really know how to do, but I'm just going to start really shallow and sneak up on it. Shallow like this way, and the blade is really shallow. And I'll sneak up on it until hopefully I get a nice snug fit in here. So let's go. That took 20 minutes all up to make 4 of these. So we've got all the bits and bobs. So this guy slots in down to there. Hopefully it's pretty much clock on, but nothing will stick up more than I can sand off easily. So the next go is tidy these up with a bit of a sanding block, then glue it together. Did I say that took 20 minutes all up? I think that's pretty good. I don't normally dry fit, but I'm going to make an exception for this one because it's making me nervous. Alright, let's see. Part A fits into part B. Once dry fit, never get it out. Too tight? Probably. That looks mighty good, I reckon. I'm very pleased. I think with this, I'm going to have a go at cutting some tapers on the legs. It's not something I've done before, but it's all about the practice. It's all about the learning. So I feel that that's something I need to have a go at. It needs pocket holes in these guys to connect the boards. I think this little setup's okay. I don't want to do anything too fancy. So I've got my miter gauge set at 8 degrees. I've got an L bracket that holds the piece. So the piece with a slot in there. This is obviously perpendicular to the miter gauge. And I have a table saw blade. So I think we're good to cut. Wow, that all felt fairly safe and easy. I have tapered legs now. That was just an L clamped to a miter gauge on an angle. So next thing we need to do is put pocket holes in the stretchers so that we can attach the top from underneath. Last but not least, spot of glue. I like it, it's nice and stable. So the feet aren't rocking at all, which means everything's kind of lined up fairly well. I don't know how I feel about the tapered legs, but it is a thing that I have done. I'm pleased with that. And tomorrow I'll put a top on it and paint it. These guys are already planed up and ready to go and will be perfect for this. So I'll just tidy up the edges and then cross cut them to about the right length, and then we'll screw them on there. The original plan was just for separate boards that had little gaps in between, but I think it's going to be nicer and easier to work with if I turn this into a panel. So got my glue, got my sticky tape. Let's make a panel. So I'll just pop that on the table with some weight on it and come back in an hour or two, trim it to final size. Now this guy should be dry enough to work on, so I'll just take the tape off and then we'll cut it to size, stick it on. Hope it's square. It's supposed to be 390. It's already 390. So I'll just trim the ends, make it 390 square, hopefully. It'll be square enough. And then I'll bung it on. Table saw. Last one. I knew they were close. Just the two came through a tiny piece. They'll be fine. All right, bit more sanding. think that's come up very, very nicely indeed. All right, let's give it a first coat of paint. Quick sand with the 120, just to denib it. Then another coat of paint. Job's done. Thanks for watching, team. I hope you enjoyed that one. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did, and I'll catch you next week in the workshop. Have a good one.